Hey, welcome everybody to the Two Big Guys and Grover podcast. We've got a special guest with us today, Sage Kimzey, calling in from the ranch right there on Zoom with us. The coronavirus was a made-up process for two guys in the PRCA. It was for Shad Mayfield and for Sage Kimzey, so that you guys would remain number one in the world. That's what I think. I think it was cooked up by you and
Never
Shad
underestimate the power of a cowboy.
Yeah.
How you getting along during your quarantine?
And it's been kind of nice for me actually. I had the injury right before quarantine happened, so just healing up the ankle, and actually it's kind of been a little blessing in disguise for me because it finally gave me enough time to take the time off, and body feels great now, and definitely ready to get back to rodeoing, but really it was kind of a blessing in disguise for me. I'm kind of a glass half full guy though. Silver lining, and I think that health is one of the big things in this sport, and I was actually just talking to Richie and Paige Champion about this the other day, about how like none of us will ever be like, okay, we need this 2 weeks off, that no bull rider ever sits down and they're like, okay, yeah, we have to take these 2 weeks off to make sure we feel good. So kind of this forced shutdown kind of gave us the time to do that. So like I said, I'm a glass half full guy, so it's not all bad around here.
We've been talking about, there's you and Jose and even Jess and guys who are at the top of their game whether it's in the PRCA, PBR, wherever it's at, of having those injuries of just what a blessing that's been. Not that it's a negative on everybody, but it is kind of just everybody wants to be riding. But I think your point is well taken.
Well, I think there's a lot of guys too that in every other sport, they take breaks. You hear LeBron takes a break. You hear, start at the list and go down from the top. Guys take breaks in other sports. We don't. We give our horses a break. You'll see bow racers haul 2 or 3, and they'll give their good horses a break. And then, depending on the arena they're running in. But as far as our rough stock guys, they don't stop.
Right.
There's never a break. You don't. It's how our sport is made. It's who we are. But what I do hope out of this is that some of the guys, like Sage himself, is saying, hey, you know what? I could take 2 weeks off, heal up, and come back better than I was before. Because we've got to, as a sport, we're starting to treat it more and more as a professional sport as we've ever done.
Mm-hmm.
We've never done that in the past. These guys like Sage and this whole crew, they treat it as a profession versus just cowboy. He understands his body. Justin Sports Med's done a great job with him.
So Sage, would it be the factor that machismo, that I'm going to power through it, or is it the finances? Is it the sponsors requiring you to be on the road, and not just you specifically? Why do you think it's that way with the bull riders?
I think more than anything, it's just a lifestyle and just kind of how we all grew up doing it. I've said it 100 times. Being tough is just a prerequisite to being a bull rider. You know what I mean? Like, you locker room, you're gonna look at a bunch of tough guys. You're not gonna look at a bunch of wimps and then there's only a few tough guys. Like, as a whole, the group of bull riders, and that's the only one that I can really speak to because that's the only one that I really know that well. Like, bull riders are tough individuals, and maybe it does go back to an old school way of thinking, that it is kind of like the gladiators. It doesn't matter how hurt you are, you get on and you put your hand in your bull rope and you try, which it's kind of crazy to think, here in 2020 that's still a way of thinking, but that's just kind of how rodeo's always been.
Well, when we were talking about taking time off, there's times of the year that you can kind of afford to be hurt. I would say end of April, early May, you can kind of afford to take a couple weeks off there. You can take maybe some time off end of August, 1st of September. Well, no, after Labor Day, you can kind of afford to be hurt for a couple weeks, stuff like that. But without this thing happening in our country, this would have been a terrible time to be hurt. with, Houston, San Antonio getting over, Austin. There was so many big rodeos that were supposed to happen right now.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, like that was the thing. This happened to me the 12th of February, I think. Had surgery on Valentine's Day, actually. And it was just like one of those deals. It was like, well, crap, man. We've got all huge rodeos coming up. And, I'm sitting here with a bum ankle. Had to miss San Antonio. I made it back to the semis. Didn't get to get on there. Missed the Extreme Bulls there. Was about, maybe 50% for Houston and the American. It was one of those deals. It was like, man, there's a lot of big time money coming up right now. And it wasn't that I couldn't compete, back to the gladiator thing, right? But like it wasn't, honestly, I probably shouldn't have been competing. Not only for my own health, but you got bullfighters out there risking their lives to save ours. And that was it was just one of those things. It was like, I didn't want to be competing, but with the opportunities that were ahead of me, I had to.
Another one of the events that you missed was the PBR Global Cup. You were asked again to be part of Team Eagles, which I know that's a huge thing for you. Talk about that process of calling McBride and saying, "Hey, man." I mean, we all knew about the injury that happened to Stan. We watched it on television, but that's an important event for you, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I really like the Global Cup. It's the only event that you kind of get that type of atmosphere, and it's hard to even quantify what type of atmosphere that I'm talking about. But it's just a different event for whatever reason. I would say it probably compares, a little bit to the Olympics in a way, just because it is, country versus country, team versus team in a sport that usually values solidarity for the most part.
Well, I can speak to the Global Cup though, as we were in the locker room and it came through that he was having surgery. Felisko was over in the corner, Cris and I are in the other corner, and Felisko looked over and said, "Sage is out." The guys that were in the locker room, because it comes in by country, and most people outside don't see is comes in by country, they get set up and then goes to the next country. I don't remember which two countries were in there, but they were all like it was an instant downer within the locker room as they discussed it.
Well, if you remember, Jose, that was one of the first things he said. He goes, "Did you hear that Sage is out?" I said, "Yeah, we heard that." And he goes, "I hate injuries," and that was his way of saying, because just like you never shy away from competition. I think everybody wants the best guys. They want to be in that Olympic style setting, right? So,
For sure. Yeah, I think
that were down.
Yeah, it was. I mean, and it was horrible, honestly. Like as soon as it happened that night, I texted McBride and I was like, "Hey, man, I know you're already deep into the alternate pool because over half the team had already, been hurt." And I just told him, I was like, "I don't know how bad it is, but it's not good. I know that, Told him that I was headed to get MRIs the next morning, and sure enough, went and had them, and they were like, "All right, well, probably gonna have to have surgery on this." It would be better if you had surgery. It was one of those things like I didn't have to, but the healing process went way smoother because I did. And I mean, back to the taking care of your body, right? Like,
right. Well, the professional
it
athlete.
was one of those things, though. It was tough to text McBride and replace me. Like nobody wants to do that, and it was straight up. It was what I told Felisko whenever he asked me. He's like, "So what was your thought process behind this?" And I told him straight up. I was like, "Man, honestly, a guy, whoever it was that was going to be my replacement, was going to have a better chance to be successful for Team USA in the end than what I was. And at that point, it would have been way too selfish of me, to put Team USA at risk."
Yep.
Well, we respect that. I mean, a lot.
Oh,
And
yeah.
even, and the opportunity fell to Dalen Swearingen, and who's a new face, and both, I mean, all the stories, the high school, the college, the PRCA, the PBR, and all that kind of stuff. But it was a great opportunity for him. And I know he was he said in the locker room, you know, because it happened pretty quick. You know, was that Friday, Thursday?
Yeah, that was what, Thursday night or no, Wednesday night. Wasn't it Wednesday? You got hurt Wednesday night.
I got hurt. Yeah, it was Wednesday night that I got hurt,
Yeah.
and then would have finalized it with McBride and told him that I couldn't do it probably Thursday afternoonish.
Yeah, that's why we were.
Yeah.
So Dalen walks in and, you know, kind of looking around, and, you know, we was talking about it, and he was like, gosh, you know, and his thing was too, it was that I can't believe Sage got hurt. This sucks, you know? And, you know, he's like, it's the worst thing in the world to get a call because someone else get hurt because we all in this boat together, you know, and that's painful, but I'll step up and see what I can do, you know?
So it's giving you time to heal. It's also giving you time to, and this could have been a double-ended sword. Maybe you wanted to be on the road so that you didn't have as much say, but you're probably deep into the old wedding planning about right now.
Oh yeah, you know it for sure. It has been great getting to be home with Alexis. It really has. You know, you don't realize how much time and how many things that you miss until you are, you know, at home. Grover, I'm sure that you can relate too, because it's you do miss so much that you don't even realize, you know,
Yep,
whenever.
you don't
the
miss,
thick
you
of
don't realize the
rodeoing.
little things till you get to be a part
Yeah.
of it.
And then, you know, so I'm home and, you know, just the little thing like getting to make dinner every night with her, you know, it's like I miss a lot of stuff, you know, willingly, because it is bull riding's what I do, it's what I love, you know, I make my living. But yeah, it is. It's been nice getting to kind of, you know, take a step back and
it's probably that
really
for both of you because she's
really do a lot of wedding planning.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's probably feeling the same thing, getting to spend time with you because she's busy too. I mean, she's a jet setter and a lot of things going on too.
But I want to point out though, because we have a lot of listeners that aren't necessarily rodeo, you know, it's Western sports and such. But Sage, you're a rodeo kid, and that's what a lot of people don't really know. I mean, you grew up, you've been giving up those things your entire life. I mean, missing out. I mean, it's just my kids, Scott's kids. I did, you know, being a rodeo clown son. You know, your dad was. You've been at the NFR as much as anybody because of your dad was there. I mean, and so what people don't realize is that this is how he grew up. I mean, it's not just, hey, I want to be a bull rider and I'm going to pick this schedule like we get guys that come on tour on the PBR side. Sage was different because he was that kid. He was a rodeo kid.
Yeah, I mean, that was just kind of my life growing up. It's always really funny because, you know, everybody talks about sports growing up, this and that. Like baseball just wasn't even an option for me when I would be about 9 or 10 years old, you know, because it was like, you know, at that time, your little league coach is like, well, you know, if you're not here practicing all the time, then you're not going to. And I didn't have the option to be there practicing all the time because it was like we were just on the road and that was just kind of what we did, you know. And yeah, it's different now, like looking back in retrospect, right? Like I just thought that was normal when I was growing up. That's how everybody lived and that's what they did. But yeah, no, it's different, but I wouldn't trade it for the world, honestly.
We were talking before we got on with you. What other events did you do throughout junior rodeo in high school, or was bull riding kind of your deal?
Yeah, no, I did pretty much all the events. I wasn't really very good at hardly any of them. Besides bull riding, to be honest. You know, I had some success. I roped okay growing up, and then got on some broncs in high school. I actually made nationals 1 year in high school. But it never really lit my fire, I guess. The only thing that I really liked doing when we were at the rodeos was getting on bulls. And you know, the older I got, finally, it was fun. I guess I was probably 16. It was my first summer going to open rodeos. And you know, I had a pretty successful summer for a 16-year-old kid. I won about 30,000 or so. And you know, of course, we still had the horses and everything to take care of. And I remember I looked up at my mom and dad because they were on me about going and taking care of something, I'm sure. And I looked up at them and I was like, I'm a bull rider. Thank you, guys. Y'all take care of the horses. I'll be in here working out and I'm just going to ride bulls. And, you know, I'd say that was kind of actually a defining moment in my life because Dad kind of actually respected it a little bit. I don't think mom was too happy about
Mom
it.
said,
But
check your attitude, get your ass out and take care of the horses.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, well, that's good, bull rider. Now you can go feed the horses.
Now you can pay for the horses.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, do you remember? I think it's been 3 years ago. It was when we came out to Cody, Wyoming, and we were. Is it 4 years?
It's 4 years now.
Seems like yesterday, but seems like forever. I think at that point you were contemplating doing some all around stuff. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I got on a few broncs. Because it's like it's one of those things. I think selective memory kind of kicked in for me in my bronc riding, and you hear all the guys, why'd you ever quit riding broncs? You rode broncs pretty good for a high school kid, this and that. You're like, yeah,
Yeah.
I could probably do
Believe
this.
the hype.
$3,000? $3,000's all I have to win. Oh, I've got this. So yeah, I got on a few broncs, and none of them went real well, but none of them went real horrible. And then we were in Dickinson, North Dakota one year. It probably was the same year. And anyway, I got launched about 15 foot up in the air on one of Corco's horses, came down and rolled my ankle bad, sprained it bad. Well, Dickinson is the week before the 4th of July. So I'm sitting here the week before the 4th of July, Cowboy Christmas, biggest run of the year, blah, blah, blah. Everybody knows the story, with a bum ankle. And I'm sitting there like, what in the world are you doing to yourself right now, Kimzey? And yeah, that was kind of the point to where I was like, probably put the broncs on at least a little bit of a back burner and focus on the bull riding.
I'm a bull rider. I'm not a.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm a bull rider.
Yeah.
We all know that you've set the goal that your main goal is to beat Donnie Gay's record. You want to win more world championships than he did. When did you set that goal?
Oh, well, I'd say that's kind of a two-part question, honestly, because I think there's a big difference in like setting a really hefty goal like that and then really kind of believing that you can achieve it. Growing up, that was what I wanted to do, right? Like, and I'm talking from a young age, like 10, 11 years old. But then I would say probably because each time you take a step up, if you will, like you don't really know how you're going to compare to your competition. That there's a lot that's just unknown whenever you take a step up, whether that jump be from high school to college rodeo to the pros, whatever that jump is. Like there's still a big jump there. And so I'd say I didn't really think it was probably possible until I broke the permit record. And because all I did in 2013 was I stayed inside the circuit. I went to like 40 circuit rodeos in the Prairie Circuit. And literally I only went to like 3 or 4 big rodeos that were outside the circuit. And it was just one of those things, like that was my goal that year, right? Like I'm a very goal-oriented person. And, that was what I wanted to focus on, was just winning the circuit, get a trip to the Ram National Circuit Finals, and just kind of set myself up, if you will. Like that was my path that I had kind of chosen for myself. So, even then though, it was like, well, this kid goes on his permit, he does all these big things. Like the only time I'd really been against the top dogs, I went to Cheyenne and won like 3rd or 4th. And then went to Lovington's Extreme Bulls and got thrown off in a short go. So I don't really only went up against those guys a few times. And honestly, and this is like little known fact that not very many people know about my career. Honestly, probably like the biggest thing that happened that really just kind of instilled confidence in me. I rode a bucker at Cheyenne that year, a Maury Tate's, and one that was not nice to get by. And I was good friends with Cooper Davis at the time. I've known Coop since probably, I don't know, sophomore year of high school for each of us. But anyway, Cooper come up to me and he told me that Tough Heedman was there, and he was like, hey, anytime that kid wants to come to my bull riding, it's just time to give me a call. And like obviously this is the first time like a legend has noticed my career, right? Like, it was unsolicited. It was just very, very natural how it all came about. And Tuff's here like, hey, tell that kid to come to my bull ridings if he wants to. So that was like a big moment for me, to think that riding at the daddy of them all, the fact that Tuff Heedham was just watching the bull riding that afternoon, and he's like, hey, this kid's got what it takes to go like do something real special. So I called Tuff that fall, and started going to the CBRs, and honestly, those were probably, I won't say the most important thing to my bull riding, but they were a huge part in my bull riding. Kind of molding into the professional competitor, from just the college kid. Because like at the time I was 18 years old, and had just got my permit. Whatever. I mean, the story's pretty long, but there's a big difference in a kid that's 18, 19 years old on his permit winning some to the next year running for a gold buckle. And I think Tuff's bull ridings and Tuff had a big role in that for sure.
Cool. Well, and you got to go against the top 15, 20 PRCA guys every week at those events, and yeah, I mean, I bar none, and I went to a lot of those too, earlier in my announcing career, but those deals were rank. I mean, they were great bull ridings, and that would have set your confidence level up extremely going into the next season.
Oh, for sure, because that's the thing, right? And it was like it was a new platform for me, kind of, because really up until that point, I had not been to very many like strictly just bull ridings, right? And that was kind of what the CBR was. And I remember my first one was in Jackson, Tennessee, and I went out there, and they introduced maybe Cole Eccles and JW. And I'll never forget, I was looking up at those guys. I was down in the arena, like with all the other bull riders. And I was just like, man, one of these days that's going to be me. Like, I'm going to be the guy getting introduced. And it just, like, it hit me hard, what I mean? And like, I just wanted that so bad. And then, I mean, fast forward, that's kind of how it is now.
But go back to, so at what point then did you say, hey, I want to beat Donnie? Like that is my goal, is to get past Donnie.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like in stone, pretty unwavering after the first one, honestly. Especially because like 14 through 17, I guess, Donnie was always in the locker room at the finals. And, just, I don't know. Donnie's probably one of my favorite people to be around. Just the knowledge that guy has, the stuff that he's seen, the stuff that he shares. He's a great mentor, great role model. You hear a lot of stories of the old Donnie back in the day, but that's not how Donnie is now, right? And he's had a huge impact on my career, and I'd say that's probably one of the reasons that I really wanted to beat his record is just being around him.
We got to spend some time. We spent 2 nights with him out in Vegas this year, and just so you know, it's mutual on his part. I mean, he is the stories, the kind of the things that he shared with us, and he talked about his dream of pulling your rope, and pulling your rope for you to win it, on the ride to win it, and that's what he says. He talks about Jim Shoulders, pulling his, and just that whole experience and watching it. What I enjoyed about him was, he can love you to death, but he's still looking at it with a critical eye. He can say, man, he's the best if he'll just do this, if he just does that, and as most bull riders, as a coach, it's hard not to look at things with that critical eye, even though you're supportive and you're like, oh man, he's got to tuck, he's got to get those heels, to look at those toes. You gotta, but Donnie was it was fun for 2 nights.
Yeah. We were at Rump's, we did Rump's show 2 nights in a row, and each night we were back in the back with Donnie, but to see the the sparkle in his eye to say, "Hey, I want to pull the rope," is cool because you don't see that in other sports because people aren't on the inside to say, "Hey, here's a legend that wants to essentially pull a legend's rope." I mean,
Right.
so to see that it's kind of like when people said, or maybe you can even compare it to a Kobe and a Shaq, because when Kobe took the court for the first time with Shaq, he said, "I want to hand you the ball first. I want to be the guy that says, okay, here's the ball," and they did, and so I think it's a neat story for our sport.
Yep, it was cool.
Well, I think like you kind of hit on, there's so much mutual respect there, because that was what, everybody kind of jokes. They're like, "Oh, Donnie's heart's gonna be broke if you ever do beat the record and this and that." And I'm like, "Man, honestly, I don't think it will." And they're like, "Well, what do you mean?" I'm like, honestly, if a guy can go win 9 world championships in the PRCA, Donnie didn't leave anything out there on the table. You're talking about a guy that literally retired, came back to bull riding, and won his last gold buckle. Like he left absolutely nothing.
Yep.
Like he couldn't have gave the sport anymore. And you're looking at, if there's someone that is able to go out there and beat that,
Absolutely.
any, reservations in being like, "Oh, well, he didn't earn this or he didn't earn that." It's like, no, if you go out and do that, like that's a huge mountain you have to climb. It's not this little goal somebody just looks into.
Well, and you're doing it right now consecutively. You haven't missed a year. Nobody has been better than Sage Kimzey for that entire time. So that to set a goal to be that many time world champions, and then to realize, my gosh, I'm doing it consecutively. That takes it to a whole nother level.
Yeah, no, it has. It's been a crazy ride for sure. I mean, I've been really blessed and really fortunate that I haven't really had to deal with any catastrophic injuries, right? Like obviously I've bumps and bruises. Yeah, knock on.
wood.
But it's it is. It's one of those things, like staying healthy is the number one thing in our game. Like off the top of my head, and I'm sure off the top of y'all's too, like you could name 5 guys that could have been the best that ever was, but it just didn't happen for them for whatever reason. And I think that like that's the number one thing for me, is making sure that my preparation kind of leads into the fact that like, hey, I'm not brittle when it comes to competition. Because I mean, there's a lot of guys, you hear it in boxing all the time. Well, yeah, he's a stud, but he's got a glass jaw. You know what I mean? And it's no different in bull riding. The only thing is, your glass jaw's going up against a 1,700-pound bull, and it will be exploited at some point.
Do you think that's something that moves in the near future in bull riding, that some of you guys will actually say, I twisted my ankle, I can't grip with it, I can't squeeze, can't whatever it is, or that, you know what, I'm going to make that commitment, I'm going to take 2 weeks off. Do you think that'll ever move itself into bull riding, or do you think it kind of stays where it's at?
Not until we get guaranteed paychecks, honestly.
Because it's the mentality, you got to ride to win, you got to ride to live.
Well, right, and like that's just kind of how the culture of it has been for forever, right? And you look at, take NBA for instance, or NFL. It's like, man, if they get a semi bad injury where they could play on it if they wanted to, like unless it has big playoff contention, like honestly, why do they care? You know what I mean? And it's like, yeah, the league game goes so far, but like at the end of the day, 25 million is 25 million. You know what
Yeah.
I'm not saying it would take 25 million to keep Cowboys on the couch and have them rest up, but I think, and I don't think bull riding is real far off of that, to where, like I don't deem it out of the question at all that the top 10 could get $100,000 bonus for the next year,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And I think that would not really curtail guys riding hurt, but I do think it would probably weigh in a little bit, the fact that like you don't have to worry financially, at least for 365 days.
So, along that line, though, you think of, and I understand, I don't want to say you're an outlier because of your continued success over a longer period of time, but do you think that the top 5, 10 guys who are making decent money, who've planned well and all that kind of stuff will ever say, you know what, I'm going to make this commitment. I mean, you hear people say it all the time. Oh, he can afford to miss a couple. Oh, he can afford to miss a couple. In reality, you probably could, but it's more of that champion's mentality that you've got to overcome it. And if I stop trying to overcome this, then I'm going to stop trying to overcome this. Do you think that that's applicable?
Yeah, that's like a real weighted, like really good question for sure. I don't know, honestly. I think that like the world title race is the number one reason why guys don't take time off.
Yeah.
So until we can kind of set up a playoff system, if you will, you know, the NFR, the World Finals is great, but at the same time, like you see it come down to 100 points, you see it come down to a couple $1,000s every year. It seems like, and it's like, well, yeah, you could take a couple weeks off and miss Caldwell and miss some really good rodeos throughout the summer and heal up, but back to the not leaving anything on the table. That's always how it's been for me. Like that's the reason that I push myself all the time, is because like, what if it does come down to, $1,500 at the end of the year, and my gluttony and my laziness just for me wanting to sit on the couch whenever I could have been rodeoing
Right.
is what cost me a buckle. Like, you want to talk about live with regret, right?
Sure.
Like there's no way if it was at that point.
I think we're seeing some great talent in the PRCA right now. So take yourself out of the picture. Who's the baddest cat going in pro rodeo right now?
Oh,
Trey.
Or give me your top
Kimzey.
three.
Trey's gonna
And
be
you don't
pissed-
even have to
little-
pick. You don't
Trey's-
even have to pick your
Trey
brother.
Trey's gonna be pissed off if he doesn't
little
pick him.
brother.
I'm just
Yeah.
saying.
yeah. Well, kind of depends on like what you're talking. I would say
Qualify it however you want. I mean, just kind of what is your take?
Who's the guy? Who's the guy that you look in the rearview mirror and you go, "Oh crap, he's kind of coming," Or who are those guys when you show up and go, "Man, those are the tough guys to beat right now."
yeah. I mean, there's so many of them. I do feel like I'm probably, and like you said, take me out of the equation. But let me look up. I would say probably the most well-rounded guy that's been around for a lot of years is probably Trey Benton.
Yep.
And again, injuries have plagued Trey his whole career. Let me pull up the standings real quick.
Is there anybody that you enjoy competing against? I know, like, we use a lot of basketball terms and football terms, but Michael Jordan always said, "I love to play against Larry Bird." I knew that when I laced up that night, I got to play against Larry Bird. Is there anybody that it's mutual in the sport, like a peer that you say, "Man, you know what? I really enjoy playing, competing against them," or?
Yeah, probably Stetson right now.
Yeah.
Would be like the number one guy that like I really enjoy riding against. Like me and him, two totally different bull riders. I mean, like couldn't be farther from the same. But Stetson's probably that guy for me. And then I would say, I don't know, I think Boudreaux's really coming on. And he's been working his tail off. Boudreaux's Achilles heel always has been that he can't ride bulls that go right. And Boudreaux knows that, and he's not too arrogant to sit down and like really look at himself and be like, "Hey, what do I have to do to get to
How
the next
can I
level?"
get better? Yeah.
The number one thing with a lot of bull riders is they're too arrogant to be like critical enough of themselves to sit down. Because this is the battle that you have to fight as a bull rider. You have to fight being confident enough in yourself to be able to go out there and do what shouldn't be able to be done. But at the same time, you still have to be humble enough to sit down and really work on your downfalls. And I think Boudreaux is one of the only like young kids that I've really seen do that in quite a while.
Do you and we have this conversation a lot in house, and we talk Global Cup the same way, and talking about your downfalls and things is when you play other sports, team sports, you normally have a coach that's able to coach you through the ups and downs of the ebb and flows of what you are, what you're good at, what you're not good at, what you need to work on. How do you who do you even use to help push you in that ebb and flow of your career?
Well, I'd say number one is Alexis. In a different way than what a high school coach does for you, obviously. But yeah, like Alexis is my number one teammate for sure. Anytime I'm struggling with anything, I can always go to her. I can always be really open.
Is she
And know
pretty
that,
blunt? Is she pretty blunt with you?
oh yeah, she's very blunt with
Yeah.
me, and like first one to tell me if I'm being a lazy son of a gun that needs to get off. Want to tell me, but she's also, the biggest cheerleader that I can ask for. So I'd say Alexis number one, and then 2 and 3 would be little brother and Tyler Bingham, my traveling partners. I think we have a really good support system like in our rig, which I think is really important. And I think a lot of guys don't really have. And we don't even talk about rodeo that much, honestly, driving down the road. Like you're looking at, we'll put on 40,000 miles in a year. Like there's only so much rodeo that you can talk, but it's a good balance. With those two, and then like I said, Alexis is she's my teammate, man, no doubt.
Well, and getting in the truck's an important part, and I tell guys this all the time that that I see that are struggling. Get in the truck with some winners, and that doesn't have to be guys that win money every weekend, but get in the truck with guys that have winner mentality, winner thoughts, because that's going to change. Bull riding is so mental. And if you don't get in the truck with some guys that will keep you positive, keep you going down the road, it will ruin you in a matter of moments.
Oh, why do you think the Brazilians are so successful? Like, honestly,
Good point.
Yep.
You're looking at those guys. You want to talk about a team? There's 13, 14 guys that can all lean on each other at any given point. You're looking at most of these American kids come out, and like pretty much all of the American kids come out straight to the top, then level off right there. Like they don't keep climbing. And like, why is that, right? To me, it's 100%. It comes back to the support system, because especially to most of the PBR events, like they're flying in by themselves every weekend, probably getting their own hotel room, like not really having that brotherhood that most team sports demand. And like the Brazilians, it's a whole different world for them. You know what I mean?
They're climbing in a van, driving 11 hours together, and you talk about that road time, you talk about that. And then one thing we notice is, at 7:30, 8 o'clock Saturday morning, there's 6 guys walking through the lobby of the hotel because they're going to work out, and they're pushing each other. We've talked about this last few shows that, Cody and I got to go down to Decatur and spend some time at Jose's place. And man, when they buck, they buck. There's 20 to 25 Brazilian guys there, and man, they do have the luxury of, having a lot of world championship leadership, and a lot of those guys. And what was really cool is they do take the time for the guys who are young gun. You could tell they're a little bit just underdeveloped, and then all of a sudden, all of a sudden 6 months, they're like, holy cow, they're getting their shots. They're getting up, they won a velocity, or they're getting that opportunity to come up to the PBR. But
I think you see it, though, too, on the rodeo side. I mean, when you start seeing the summer runs take off, you've got a number of guys that, whether it be calf ropers, bulldoggers, barrel racers, you start seeing money rigs in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
And you see those money rigs pull in and say, there's that whole crew's winning. Bull riders, saddle bronc riders, it's the same thing. You see them pull in, and you're like, man, they are taking all the money. Everybody always talks about back in the day with Lane and Tuff and those guys that they pulled in, it was 1-2, or, they were taking the money. But a lot of that goes back to the team mentality of being able to lean on each other, have the conversation, push each other, and know that you're going to be confident. It's not a matter of being cocky. It's a matter of being confident when you pulled in. One of us is going to take the money today.
Yeah, I was going to share this with you. I don't know if you remember this or not. In Cody, Wyoming, do you remember when we first launched our helmet? We got in the car and drove out, right? Do you remember Brody Yeary being in that, right? So he was riding with somebody, couldn't cross the border, kind of got stuck in Wyoming, was with you and Cody, remember?
Yeah.
Was hanging out there. He has probably told me 3 times that just that instance of being around you, Cody, and there was a couple other guys that were all hanging out, and just being in that setting. And he's been in rodeo, he's been in bull riding his whole life too. So, but it was the impact of knowing that it is who you hang around with, it is who you surround yourself with, and because we were talking about that, about what advice would he give a young kid. I think we were talking about the YBR and everything, and he said, find a way to be in circles, find a way, because you're going to be who you're around.
Well, and I think that with you guys, I see a lot of it because of high school rodeo.
Mm-hmm.
We see a lot of guys that met each other as a freshman, sophomore, junior. They made nationals, and they built a relationship, whether they're calf ropers or team, because you're all there and you go to the dances and those things, and you form this relationship. And then later in your career, you see the guy at the other end of the arena, and you've already, you've been down that road with him before. And so there's a different set of relationships on the rodeo side that allow that to happen. And I think a lot of it has to do with high school rodeo. I mean, you're one. You've got a number of guys that are not bull riders that you
have that relationship.
Yeah,
with.
that you've got that relationship with.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I don't know. It's so funny to me, like how all the old cliches, well, you are who you surround yourself with. It's like, man, those are all like, they're old cliches for a reason. You know what I mean?
Those are damn true.
They're so true, and they're usually so juvenile in their thought process, but it's like, man, you have to be surrounded by a good group of people, because like, this sport will chew you up and spit you out if you don't have something to fall back on, right? Like, if you're hitting rock bottom, true rock bottom, every time that you stumble in this sport, good luck getting back up to the top. You might do it 1, 2, 3, 4 times, but there will
rebound, right?
You cannot climb from rock bottom that many times. So if you can only fall halfway down the mountain and then have your support system help you back up, like, come on, man. It's back to another cliche: work smarter, not harder, right? Like, surround yourself with those people, and it is like, it makes your road a paved one instead of beating through the
bumpy. How about you had mentioned earlier a little bit about the kind of that surrounding you mentioned TB3, you mentioned your brother, you mentioned Tyler. Let's talk about your brother a little bit. Well, I mean, it's got to, when you're, I'm going to make an assumption here, but I think it's an assertion versus assumption. When you are the top rider, top dog in an industry, in an event, to know that your little brother's coming on and really has accomplished, I wouldn't say exactly, but similar in the path. What are your thoughts on that? What does that mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, it means a lot to me, right? Like, just for Trey to be successful in whatever he's doing. Like, I really don't, I really honestly don't care what, like, Trey chooses to do as a career. Bull riding was what he wanted to do. So, I've just always kind of taken it, and letting him kind of do his own thing, and just helping any way I can. And it's so cool to see, like, especially to get to be around Trey now, because like, I missed out on a lot of Trey's, like, upbringing, back to the missing out on stuff, missing out, right? Like, yeah, because let's see, he graduated 5 years after me. And really, like, I graduated in 2012. He would have been an 8th grader or whatever it was. Like, I was just gone from that point. Like, I was out rodeoing, I was out doing my own thing, was in college, just wasn't around a whole lot. So really, like, in the years that Trey developed into the young man that he is, like, I wasn't around. So it's been really great for me. Like, number one thing, obviously, yes, I am super proud of him for everything he's accomplished, and I'm looking forward to more in the future. But the number one thing for me, like, us getting to travel together, like, I got to know my little brother again, and I'd say that was like the number one thing for me, was just a relationship with him.
And we talk about surrounding ourselves. I mean, you're a rodeo family too, and now you've got, with Dustin marrying Will, and now you've got Tim on the other side, and so I mean, you've got world champion. I mean, so it's a family atmosphere. It's rodeo, but your family's surrounded itself again. with those people.
Yeah, and it is. I mean, like bottom line, I always know my family's got my back. No matter what dumb decision that I do or bad decision I make, whatever, like back to the whole not hitting rock bottom, right? And I think that's the number one thing that a good support system gives you. Like, do they make the wins a little bit sweeter? Yes, obviously they do. But they make the losses and the times that it would destroy some people, they make them bearable and really like not even a big deal.
I want to make mention of this. A couple years ago, we worked with JB. He was hurt and he put on a school up in North Dakota, and something very similar to that. JB has always got the reputation or the perception of him is that he's just been this warrior that stands out front, does his own thing, and all that kind of stuff. It was almost verbatim what you just said about having a support system around you and allowing those people to help you. He said something very similar to that. It's like his thing was, you're only going to be as good as your support system. We can think we can do it on our own, but we can't. He says you got to practice. You got to do those things. You have to have the mentality. But it's something very similar to that. Just you're only going to be as good as your support system can help you rebound.
Well, and that is the thing too, though. Like what JB was hitting on too, though. It's like, so a support system is great, but at the end of the day, like, it's on you too. Like this is a very singular sport that it comes down to your decisions, your choices, and your actions more than anything. So it's like, get yourself set up with this great support system, but then like
get your ass off the couch.
Don't work. Like, it is work at the end of the day. It's not something that, you see, guys right in front of 40,000 people, winning bukus of money and this and that. And it's like, oh man, this is just the greatest life ever. But like, hey, that's not 99% of the time spent thinking about bull riding.
I agree.
People don't see what's on the other side.
All they see is Saturday night.
Exactly.
4 o'clock in the morning at a quick shop eating a burrito, trying to get to the next road.
Well,
and guys, you got 2 guys that are trying to sleep in the back. So you're telling them, I can only go another hour. Then it's your turn. And
well, think about the conversations we've had. With the Dalen Swearingens, the Cole Melansons, those guys who are the rodeo guys. So Scotty Knapp. We kind of tease Scotty. It's like Scotty will drive from New Mexico to Virginia, back to Washington State, down to Fort Worth, Texas, and you're like, dude, how do you do it? And he's like, it's just what we do. And people don't realize that. People just don't realize that, man, you're driving 11 hours, driving 17 hours, 8 hours,
He's
6 hours.
He's a rodeo kid. It comes down when you grow up as a rodeo kid. It's a part of who you are. It's ingrained in your blood.
Well, Cody Wood, you remember that summer that you were traveling with Cody. You just got that RV, and and he was traveling, and he just said to be able to do it in an RV, it was worlds different than being in a car, being in a truck, being in a minivan, and he's like, I can drive a ton. He goes, but the good thing is I can get out of that seat and go climb into bed. He said, we've done this for so long, not having that luxury. Because Scotty, give us a call. We're in Kansas City. Swing by. We always have a place to stay. He's like, man, I'm so used to sleeping at the truck stops in my car,
Yeah.
It's like, man, people just don't realize
and it is
that commitment level of you guys.
And like, that's the luxury that, I have at this point in my career is I can go out and I can buy a nice RV and travel in it, no problem. But it is, I mean, a lot of young kids too, like they come up, they don't have the luxury of, going to get a nice rig. And like, it is though, it's, I think, well, like bottom line, we only have one tool that we can really invest in, like besides our equipment, which that's a whole nother topic. But like the one thing that we can truly invest in is our body, right? And I think that's like the number one thing for these young kids too, is like your body is a temple and you only have one of them, period. And I don't know.
Hey, Sage.
I hate the
Sage.
Riding.
Your body is a temple. I was going to interject something about there are big temples, and then there's little temples. But go ahead. Sorry. I was going to point that way. The big, but go ahead.
Fair enough. Yeah, so it is though. It's like, man, you have this one body and you have this one tool, if you will. And a lot of guys do a disservice to themselves and a disservice to their career and their goal and all the work that they put in by not really treating their temple that well, And it's like, okay, so you want to talk about longevity? I dislike the whole, well, hang on till your head hits the ground, son. Like, I really do. And I do think there is a place for it. And I do think for young kids, like, they do need to try hard, period. Like, there's no way you're ever going to get to the level you want to be without trying hard. But, like, at the end of the day, like, if knowing what I know now, like, I took so many really just ignorant stompings and dirty jerk downs. And I mean, like, I got hurt a bunch just from really my ignorance on how important a practice bull was. You know what I mean? And I do think it really instilled a lot of good things in me, because I don't quit a whole lot. But the other side of it too is, like, especially as you're growing into your career, if you will, like, there's a point of no return in bull riding, period. And there's a point to where, like, you're like, hey, this next jump, don't really know what's going to happen. It could be catastrophic or it could be okay. And, like, you have to be willing and able to weigh those percentages in your mind, and then also kind of think about what you stand to gain for this. And, like, you have to be able to make a split-second decision in that amount of time, because it's like, you get to the point, and this staying healthy thing, right? Like, this is what this all goes back to, is it's impossible to grit your teeth and try 100% every single time, every single jump, and not put yourself in a compromising position. And I think that's, like, one of the hardest things to learn as a bull rider.
We see,
early, then you're kicking yourself. But if you quit too late, then you're hurt for 6 months on the side of the road with your thumb up in the air. Absolutely nothing to your name, because, you just wrecked your career out for $1,000 at a rodeo. And it's like, all of that stuff needs to be taken into account for sure.
We get that a lot. As we obviously we're talking to people about the helmet and all those kinds of things, and we talk about maintenance and all those. We use you as an example a lot of times. Obviously, we use Stetson Lawrence, and there's some other people that's like, listen, here's the situation, and Sage continues, to grow, get better, and everything like that. And a lot of the responses are from the educated bull riders or their coaches or their dads. They always say, well, Sage never puts himself in that position, and that's the one thing that you were talking about, how hard that has been to instill in some of the younger riders, of recognizing that. The coach in me would want to hone in. Everything else can be learned pretty easy. That's probably the psychological, that's probably the confidence decision making of, yep, oh, he bailed off that one. Well, probably bailed off for a reason. He probably, let go. You're right about the whole, we've seen guys hold on until they're digging, they're plowing a row in the bottom of the dirt, So, but I think that's we get a lot of that feedback about not putting yourself in that position, but it's kind of understanding the whole game. And I don't know that we see bull riders, different levels, I'm not saying at the higher levels, that really don't have a clue, that have just started, that are trying to figure it out. And they think, I've got to hold on for dear life. I heard Gary say this in Wichita, Kansas, Gary LeFew. He said, if we have to motivate you and to encourage you to hold on longer, you're never going to be the bull rider. Because that's the want to and the have to that you have to have. We should be saying, listen, you got to quit holding on. You got to be able to recognize when that's time,
Well, and that was me to a T whenever I was a young kid, right? Like, I had a lot of try, not a whole lot of talent. I can't say that. I was average talent wise, and then had a lot more effort than 99% of the kids that I was going against. And I don't know. I was reading this psychology book just the other day that was talking about how they don't think. How did they put it? It was something along the lines of they don't think that the best athletes are truly, the most gifted best athletes. They think the best athletes are the best learners. And I mean, I truly do believe that in my heart of hearts, because it's, you look at all these guys like Tom Brady's obviously a perfect example. And then, I mean, there are just freaks. Don't get me wrong. Like there's just the naturally gifted people that like they were put on this earth to do one thing, and it doesn't matter if they try real hard or don't try at all. Like they're just the natural at whatever it is. But I really do think, in most instances, it is all about, how well can you learn? And that's what I try to tell all the bull riders that are really struggling with something is most of the guys are always struggling with the same thing over and over again. And I'm like, and my little brother's a prime example, right? Like he really has a few things that he does like quite often that really hamper his career. And I just tell Trey, I'm like, hey, just don't get bucked off in the same way again. Like literally just change whatever it is that you have to change. And whether it be like, because to me, if you're on one end of the spectrum, you have to find the other end of the spectrum before you can find the middle, really. And that's what I always tell everybody. I'm like, hey, man, just play with it a little bit. Like, don't do the same thing over and over again. Like, that's insanity, right? We all know that. So find something that it is. Maybe it's the biggest change up that you'll ever have in sport, but you have to be able to find the middle, and you have to understand the whole spectrum before you can really know what you're after.
Do you think that has more to, or do you think it may reflect a little bit on what we were talking about earlier about coaching in the sport? My whole background's been coaching, right? College football. So, and I remember there were several times where I could look at a player and say, man, you got to get that elbow up when you're delivering that ball, or your footwork here, you didn't open up, your hips were still closed and you're not going to be able to throw the ball, whatever, an offensive lineman, hand placement. And inevitable, there would be those guys that would say, Coach, I had him right there, right? And then it's like, okay, we walk back in the film room and you put it on the projector and you're like, okay, where are your hands? Down by his waist. Where are they supposed to be? Up in his chest. Same thing going with, bull riding and other sports. Is it that mentality of taking coaching, wanting to learn, being students of the game? And you made a statement when we were in Cody. I don't mind changing if I can understand how it's going to help me be successful.
Yeah.
Which for me was like, man, I've been around a lot of bull riders that they don't want to change anything. Same boots, same socks, same spurs, same straps, same jeans, same boots, same shirt, same undershirt, same glove until you just can't wear it anymore. And that willingness to, I'm not afraid to change. You remember saying that? You're like,
right? No, I don't. But I definitely, I mean, it's something that I would say. So yeah.
Well, we were talking about the helmet. It was when we first fit you, and we were saying, hey, take it a couple of days. And you're like, nope, we're going to wear it tonight. It's out there at Cody. And you're like, nope, we're going to wear it tonight. And I'm like, hey, wait a minute. Why don't you take it, get some time. And you're like, I didn't expect it to fit like this. I'm going to, I'm like, well, it's going to be different. And you're like, I'm not worried about different. This is a good feel. I'm not afraid of this at all. This is a comfort thing that I think is, and so I think that's something young athletes have to learn to be able to, embrace change, not change all the time or whatever, but to recognize those things that can help you be successful.
Yeah. Man. Well, and that's one thing too. You mentioned film. Like, film's huge, right? Like, because film really hasn't been around in bull riding and very applicable, right? For literally, like, we're only maybe 10 years into it.
Right.
Like, maybe 5, really, if you want to talk about smartphones and everybody having every single ride at their beck and call. But it's yes. Sorry, the dog's jumping on me. But film's huge, and it is in any sport because it's just like what you're saying. Like you can actually break down what is going on instead of, you know, your Uncle Tommy out here telling you, well, son, you need to try a little harder, or you need
Hold
this or
on.
that.
Quit letting go.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, no, like there's a science to every sport, and bull riding's no different.
Well, Paulo Krimber, do you remember this conversation I'm going to talk about? Is when Paulo was here during the Kansas City event, we had him on. We got to talk to he and Jose. We were asking what the difference is in the game now than when Paulo was riding. And Paulo said for him it was unique because he was Brazilian. No one spoke Portuguese. He had to point at menus and things like that. And he said, you know, we had to look at a map to get places. You know, we didn't have the smartphones just for traveling, communication. He said, and then now, he said, it will take you less than 2 minutes to watch 3 videos on the bull you're getting on in an hour. You know, you can find those. He said that's elevated the game of the current riders, you know, so much, you know, with technology. And I think, and I hope my coaching part of me says, man, I hope we even take it even further. You know, we need to take this, you know, breaking it down, getting. I think Gary does a good job of that. There's probably some other coaches that kind of help, but you know, Gary thrives on looking at your videos, you know, writing all over them, and giving them right back to you. You know, and I think that's what the sport. I hope. I think that grows. I hope that grows in the sport.
Sage, we thought this was going to be a great interview, and it has been. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule, because even though we're not rodeoing, I know you're still busy.
Yeah, it's not that busy right now, but yeah, you bet, guys. Anytime.
But thanks for joining us. We'll catch back up to you whenever we get to go to rodeos again, which God, I hope is June. I hope.
Yeah.
We're
I hope it's
but stay healthy. Tell Alexis hi for us, and congratulations again on the engagement. And we can't wait to see you get back to riding again.
Appreciate it. Take care, guys.
All right,
Thanks,
have
man.
a good day. So that's our talk with the champ, Sage Kimzey. And join us next time here on the Two Big Guys in Grover podcast.